Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Future Chat. On the show today, we are going to be taking around an hour to do a draft. I'm trying to figure out what the best way to describe this is. We are drafting items that will be on stage, either in slides or spoken by a presenter, or things that just happen in the event. And we're going to alternate 10 things.
Visually or audibly.
It's a draft. Yeah, or like spoken by a presenter.
Or shown on a slide.
Yeah. You're reiterating what I've already said.
So I don't think you said that.
Those are the only two things I said. This has been a very contentious day for both of us. I don't know why we're being so, but I have a feeling it's going to get competitive here. So we have taken this is sort of an homage, so to speak. We did this last year in the September event, but we did not actually broadcast a show about it. So we are taking our lead from the Upgrade podcast on Relay FM. They did a draft earlier this week on Monday, where they did a similar thing that we're doing, 10 items, and they went back and forth, but they did it exclusive draft style. So they were not allowed to repeat. Once an item had been taken, the other person could not use that item. We are not being as exclusive. We are going to allow duplication of items, with the caveat that if you take the item in a later pick, numerically, or in a later round, I guess, and it comes up, if it is true, then the person who had it ranked higher gets a bonus half a point. This made it very interesting last year because we had 4 things that overlapped. And so I'm intrigued to see how it plays out with us going round by round, because last year we just each said 10 things in order. And so I don't know, did I miss any rules that we discussed? We took the picks that Mike and Jason from Upgrade had, their 20 picks, 10 each. And then I added a few of mine overlapped with theirs, so I left them out, but I added a few and you added a few. And that's where we each took our list of 10. So there's about 28 items here, and we each have 10 from that list. Is there anything else that you want to say before we start?
So given that we're picking these live and
yes,
alternating, it kind of defeats the purpose of the extra point for picking something ahead.
Well, no, because you can take it, but knowing that it will be lost. Like if it comes up, you would only get a half point. Like you'd get half a point less than the other person for getting it. So it becomes a strategy to do it more than it was before. There's less incentive to take a pick that has already been picked.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's fair. I think within knowing the rules of that, if we choose to stick with our list that we have, even though something has been taken on it, that's the risk that we take.
Okay. So are you going to do this like snake style?
We can, but I would only do that if you wanted to.
Well, I don't think it's fair that one person's always the one picking before the other person.
That's true. That's fair. So you'd rather go snake then?
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay. In that case, do you want, since it is the occasion after all, we'll use Siri to flip a coin. Are you okay with those terms?
I'm okay with that. We're assuming that Apple's pseudo-random number generator is reliable, so.
Yes. So I'll initiate the coin flip and you call it right now.
I'll call it heads.
Okay, here we go. Siri, flip a coin.
You're on 458 Le Baudelaire Avenue.
It did not hear me correctly. This did not bode well for the draft. Siri, flip a coin.
It's heads.
Okay.
Nice. Heads. So now I get to choose. I guess you can decide what the coin flip actually meant.
No,
I think it's fair to say that the winner gets to choose who goes first.
Sure, you can choose who goes first.
I will I will pick first.
Okay, good choice. I don't know why you would choose to go second.
I don't know.
I guess you
There
get
could have
second
been
and
some
third.
strategy.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you could pick 2 in a row, but then I'll
Yeah.
get picked 2 in a row the next time. So
Yeah.
So I guess prior to going forward, we'll post the items that we had to pick from in the notes so that people can get some insight into what we picked and didn't pick.
Yeah.
Pick. I am going to have the debut of the Siri speaker be my number 1 pick.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to talk about our picks before or after the second person picks.
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about it. So why do you think they're
So
going to
my rationale for picking it as high as I did was it appears to be running and seemingly most confident rumor out there right now, especially in light of Amazon and Google already getting in the game, and now this new. By the way, sneak peek on this week's Future Chat, we'll be talking about the new that Andy Rubin just released.
Of course.
So now we've got, I guess, 3 at this point. Speakers.
At least 3 major ones, anyways.
I think just 3 in general. I don't think you have to qualify that.
If you call any Echo device,
any Amazon one, so three companies that are in it, yeah. So I think it's high time that Apple got into the game, and it's been long enough that their history of letting a market or a product kind of play itself out before getting into it and perfecting it on their own end. I think it's reached that point. And at this point, if they don't release something WWDC or at least talk about it, they'll be seen as being behind the game.
Right. Further than they are already.
Exactly. But I think it's up to this point has been, they're just working on it and trying to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't at the very least allude to working on it, but I think at this point they need to release something and say it's shipping at some point this year.
Right. Okay, so my top choice is improved iPad multitasking. I put /split view here because what I want is multitasking between the splits of the views. So I don't think that necessarily fits exactly with their picks. They have redesigned.
Wait, so independent multitasking between the splits?
I want you to be able to pick, I don't want there to be a left-right distinction. That's what I'm picking, is that the multitasking will be improved, and in that happening, split view will be redesigned. Like, you'll be able to pick what is on the left side and pick what's on the right side, as opposed to being able to pick what's on the right side, but what's on the left side is your main app, and you'd have to leave it in order to open something different.
Gotcha.
So
I'm not familiar with how it works already because I don't have an iPad.
So right now, I'll give you a 1-minute history lesson. Right now, what you can do is you can have once you have one app open, you do a gesture in from the right, like you slide in from the right, and it gives you the last app you were using in split view. And it takes up about a third of the screen, and it's slid over, like slide over means that it's like over top of the other one. If you grab the handle that appears next to that app, again, you can slide it and it permanently becomes split. The screen permanently becomes split. You can split it either, it's about 1/4 to 3/4, or you can drag it all the way half and then go half and half on the screen. And you can, from that right app that you've just split over, you can pull down from the top of that app, and then you get a list of recent apps, similar to the way multitasking used to work on the iPhone and the iPad, in that you'll have a list of apps that you scroll up and down through, and you can access.
And are these just apps that are already available to multitasking, or can you?
They're only apps that are available in multitasking. Some of them are not.
So they're not new. You can't have a new instance of an app. Like, right. You can't launch a new instance of something. It has to be already in the multitasking. Yeah. Yeah.
And it keeps them all. Like, there's no way to quit an app from multitasking. It just ranks them in the order that it thinks you're going to need them. So it tends to be approximately the order you last used them in split view, but it's not always exactly like that.
Okay.
It's very awkward, and that's why everyone keeps talking about how they want this to be better.
Sure.
And so that's what I'm going for.
Okay. Interesting to pick it so high, but
I really want it, and we've been getting a lot. I don't know if you heard it all in today's Connected as it was released. They talked about an app a company called Readdle, and they have an email app, they have a document picker type app, like a Finder type app, and they introduced the ability to multitask or to drag and drop things across. If you have two apps in split view that are both Readdle apps, you can drag documents between them, which is something that the native iOS does not allow. And so they were discussing.
Would you call them windows?
Well, no, because they're just two side by side full screen apps. They're not windows in the traditional sense of being able to move the windows around independently. You can just grab a file that's in one window. Like, say you have an email app and the Finder, the document picking app, you can drag a file from the document app and add it as an attachment to an email.
Right.
Or you can take something out of an email.
That's how Windows typically behave, right?
Exactly. So right now they're not Windows, but those two apps behave as though they are kind of just full screen windows.
Right.
But they're only in very specific domains. Like, to be clear, these are in the native file system. So if I go in, there's Google Drive integration with that app. If I go into the Google Drive portion where they're not actual files, they're just Google Drive kind of redirects almost. I can't go and drag a Google Drive file into the email. It's very specific to that.
Right, to be able to talk to each other. Yeah.
And so that is my hope, that is a sign that Apple is going to be doing something similar, hopefully better, with the entire operating system. My second choice, because that's the way you chose it, is a new advanced Siri kit with new actions. And the reasons for this are obvious. As we saw, I want Siri to be improved. I asked to flip a coin and it told me where I live. I don't really know why. So I specifically want the ability. So right now I can send a text message through messages with my voice. I can set a calendar event through calendars with my voice. I can play a podcast through podcasts, the Apple app, with my voice. I can do all this stuff with Apple's apps. But all I can really do with other apps is say, open this. Unless they have the specific 6 different types. There's like banking apps, ride hailing. There's a few different categories of apps that I rarely use, like restaurant booking, I think might be one, that you can do with your voice with third-party apps, but it's very, very, very limited. And I want the ability to like go into Facebook Messenger with Siri and say, hey, send a Facebook message to Mike, and be able to dictate that message and have it just send. And so I'm hoping that things like messaging, things like maybe peer-to-peer banking, all of these things, I think you can, some like I said, with banks, you can do it, but I want more actions to integrate with this. Another interesting one would be like calendars. Like you can add events to calendars, but not third-party ones, just specifically the calendars app, or being able to say, hey, play future chat in Overcast, as opposed to just having to say open Overcast, then going and finding it.
Right.
That's my second one.
Okay. For my second pick, I will go with the wording of this is ambiguous of what they mean, but I'm going to go with MacBook Pro update.
Okay.
And I don't know what the intent behind that was, but I read that as, and again, so I haven't listened to the upgrade episode that they went over this draft. I don't know if you did yet.
I did.
You did? Okay. So that's going to influence / bias you. So
Nope.
we'll set that aside for now.
Like I said, I picked at least half my list before listening to it. So
subconsciously,
well,
affect you. But anyway, aside from that, my interpretation of the MacBook Pro update item was they would give an update on the status of a new MacBook Pro.
Okay.
Said it would, like, whether it was available to order or ship right away, or if they're saying, hey, it's in the works, or hey, it's coming in September, whatever. Aside, but basically it's just a general update on Pro, whether, and so not specific to it being available to order or ship right away.
Okay.
So that will be my second pick. And my third pick to go with, Mac OS goes to 11.
Okay.
To get in line with iOS 11. and I think that's pretty natural. So as good a time as any to get away from the OS 10 that's been around for however many years.
Yeah. Okay.
So have Mac OS 11 and iOS 11 be on the same version number, I guess, or major release. So that'll be my third pick.
Okay. Makes sense.
So just to
yeah.
get some insight into the MacBook update, because it's kind of semi-related to the speaker thing, because Microsoft is getting on board with a high-powered laptop that could potentially compete with MacBooks, and the Chromebook is kind of starting to take a bit more of market from Apple when it comes to laptops. Not in this same tier per se, but competitors are coming out with new laptops, and I think it's appropriate. It's an appropriate time to give an update on what they're doing.
Okay, so not necessarily. What if they announce a new MacBook? Because you're saying they're going to talk
It's
about
not
it.
the same
What if
thing.
they release it?
That's the same thing.
That's the same
Is
thing?
either
Okay.
or.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's I'll accept that. Although
Hopefully that's not too broad.
it's just you're picking two things there, but it's
How's
fine.
that picking two things?
You're literally saying if they're either going to announce it or release it. But anyway,
Well,
it's fine. It's not
say
broad.
and
It's just
release it,
vague.
or they can announce it and then have it released later. Like either way, they'll announce it. So I'll say MacBook Pro announced, and whether it's released or not is irrelevant.
Okay, that's fair.
So it's a one thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my third pick, coincidentally, I already wrote it down, is also that Mac OS goes to 11 and matches iOS for all the same reasons you stated. So in that case, if it comes true, we would each get a point. And
no, that was my second pick, though. So this is your third pick. No, wasn't Mac OS was number 2? Wait, which one was it? No, sorry, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
I was paying attention. You were not. For all the same reasons you said, it just makes sense for them to be together. And why else would they have waited through Mac OS, or I guess at the time it was OS 10.10, 10.11, and 10.12, if they weren't going to do it when iOS got to 11? If they don't do this, and if they go to 10.13, consider it a complete wasted opportunity, and I will make fun of them endlessly. So yeah, that's logic for that. My number 4 pick is new photo syncing and sharing functionality. So we saw a huge step forward in this from Google at Google I/O, from Google Photos. And I don't think that Apple will necessarily step up to compete directly, specifically with the same features as Google Photos, but I think they will get better ways to share and sync photos between people. Whether that, I don't think that's necessarily going to be like by face or anything like Google Photos is doing, but I think they will give better control for sharing photo libraries, because right now the shared photo library thing works, but it's very nitpicky to set up, and it's not very easy to use, and it's not really good for one-off sharing. It's kind of useful if you really use it for long-term photo sharing, but for me, for one-off events, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to use a shared thing, especially because there's no kind of cross-platform functionality. If people are outside the Apple ecosystem, they can't add any pictures to it or really view it. They can view it on the web, but it's just not great. And so I'm going with new photo syncing and sharing functionality for both iOS and Mac.
Okay, so this is a modification on the upgrade item, because
I think I just changed the wording. I had it written down first, but it's not really photos metadata is synced across devices, which is one of the ones they had.
Okay, so this is a different one.
Yes, it's more than that. Whether or not that happens, it's true. I deduplicated it because that is there, but you're right. There's not a specific photo sharing syncing item that they said. It was just that one. I'm sorry. It's not on the list, but I picked it.
It's okay.
But it's close.
I'll accept it.
It's very close. Okay, that
You've
was
been
my number
gracious for
4.
accepting mine.
My number 5. Yes, it's my turn for 5.
What? No.
We get 2. We're snaking. I get 2.
I know you did. You just did
my
3
2.
and
Yeah,
4.
you're right. Yeah, that's what I checked. Good. Sanity check. Just kidding.
Okay. So my number 4 pick, I strongly believe this is going to be the year of photos.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go with Apple Photos goes cross-platform.
Okay.
They're going to open up the floodgates. They're going to knock down one of their walls in their garden, and they're going to allow us lowly PC and Android users their Apple Photos environment.
Mhm.
And you hear about people talking it. Hear people talking about it all the time, having to use either solely Google Photos or Google Photos in conjunction with Apple Photos. I think it's only natural that they start trying to encourage people who aren't maybe fully in the Apple ecosystem to try out Apple Photos to see how it does compare with Google Photos, because I'm sure there's parts of Apple Photos that is better than Google Photos. I think I guess that's more related to Apple devices specifically about the syncing. But I think Microsoft's focusing on trying to be cross-platform, and Android or Google specifically has been historically cross-platform. So I think it's post Steve Jobs, I think I see Apple getting a bit more cross-platform as well.
Interesting.
And what better place to start than Apple Photos? And actually, it's technically Apple Music was the first to iTunes. iTunes was the first, and Apple Music was
iTunes
also
went
cross-platform.
with Windows.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So iTunes has started out being the first cross-platform
which
product.
Famously, Steve Jobs had to be convinced for years to let iTunes go to Windows.
And because people had iPods and PCs, so it made sense that they wanted to use PCs. So in the same vein, PCs at work or at home, and they have an iPhone, or they have an iPhone for work and a PC at home, and an Android phone, like all this different kind of stuff. And it'd be nice to be able to use Apple Photos on all your devices, regardless of the operating system. So that's why I'm picking that at number 4. And my number 5 is.
Can I comment on your number 4?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm very intrigued because this was not on their list, and it's interesting that coming from Android, you say that you think this is a strong enough possibility to put it in the top 5. And I didn't put this either, but iMessage has been rumored for years to be going cross-platform and has never done it. If they do this, I would argue that it would be part of a bigger movement to bring lots of things cross-platform. But I'm intrigued that they didn't think or to include iMessage or want to. I didn't, and you didn't, but you did put photos. I'm very intrigued. I don't think I fundamentally disagree that it will happen, but I'm very intrigued that you chose it.
It's funny you mentioned iMessage, because I was very close to putting iMessage as well.
Yeah.
But the reason I didn't was because I think iMessage is still a big enough selling point for Apple products,
right,
that they're not going to cannibalize that by making iMessage cross-platform.
Right.
But I think they can afford to make Apple Photos cross-platform because it's arguably worse than Google Photos.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be worse off making it cross-platform. If anything, they'll make people who aren't happy with Google Photos for one reason or another to try out Apple Photos and possibly get that market.
Right. Okay.
I was aware of the, I don't know if it's irony, but just the fact that iMessage has been, it makes sense for it to be cross-platform, but it hasn't been. But I think there's very different reasons for why one is cross-platform, or why one could be and one wouldn't be.
Right. Okay.
So for my number 5 pick, I'm going to have a pick of bigger free iCloud storage.
Okay.
More than 5 gigabytes free. So this is kind of in the same vein with getting on board with the other cloud service providers. And I think 5 gigabytes is nothing these days.
It is literally nothing.
So like Dropbox it's horrible for 5 gigabyte limit. Like I can't.
Yeah.
Actually, is it? I don't know. That's still 5 gigabytes. I think it is, isn't it?
But many people have referred, or at least tech inclined people who are
Wow.
probably going to use 5 gigabytes are more inclined to have gotten all their bonuses over the years to have more than that.
What, up to like 7 or something?
I think like there was some photo stuff and there was some university related things they did that I think have since expired, but I haven't used Dropbox in a really long time. I had almost 20 gigabytes in there at one point.
Okay.
But I think it's probably down.
I think the most I got, the most I got was around 10ish. Because I remember the photo uploading bonus you got. Because I think for every gigabyte of photo uploading, it added a gigabyte to your storage or something along that line.
Yeah, something like that.
Photo storage up to a certain point. And so mine got up to like 7 to 10 gigs. But once Drive came out with 15, I'm like, screw this.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. The common theme, at least in my picks, have been Apple catching up to everyone else.
Yeah.
And again, it might be just more a matter of timing with when these product releases are. But I think this is, and I don't even think it's like Apple's in a negative light right now, but I think it's that they should take this opportunity to show what they have to offer and compete with everyone else right now.
Yeah.
Outside of just offering great hardware. Like I think this is like the services and software side. I think they have a lot to prove.
Okay. So in theory here, I could change. I'm not going to do it, but I could change my picks here because you sniped my pick and picked it higher than I did. We'll see when we get down to where I have it currently, whether I will move my pick of bigger free iCloud storage. But for now, it remains below 5. I will say that every night I have to dismiss every morning when I wake up, I have to dismiss the message that says your iPad or your iPhone did not back up because there's not enough storage. I have 5 gigabytes, and I've tried very close to keep both devices at around 2.5 gigs backed up, but inevitably, I have too much. So it's too much of a hassle. I'm actually thinking if they don't do this at WWDC, I'm just going to spend the 99 cents a month to get 20 gigabytes because I want these things backed up, but it's so restrictive. 5 gigabytes, not only 5 gigabytes per device, which would be more reasonable, still a little silly, but it's 5 gigabytes total per Apple ID.
Yeah.
So the more devices you have, the more screwed you are.
Well, it's even worse because when I got my new work iPhone, is it's like, oh, iCloud. It's like, oh, your iCloud storage is full. I'm like, what? This is a new phone. How can it be full already? I'm like, what? My old one's still in there? Yeah. So I have to like delete my old one and then re-back up my new one. It's like, this is ridiculous.
It's very ridiculous.
It's super, super crazy.
Okay. So my number 5 pick is for iOS 11, we will get, I wrote down visual refresh, but you have chastised me for that language being very vague. So what I'm talking about is not just that it will look a little different. I'm talking not necessarily the exact, like the same change as we got from iOS 6 to iOS 7 when they did the whole flat transition. I just think we're going to get a big set of visual changes. Kind of like we got for the Apple Music app and the Apple News app, where all the fonts changed and got a lot bigger and the sections moved around. There will be some kind of visual redesign, rethink to match that look.
Now, before you continue, like vagueness aside, if they make a point to bring it up on stage or in the slides, I will give it to you.
So
regardless of, because if it's important and major enough that they'll mention it, then I'll give it to you. I just don't think that it's going to be if they do change it, it's not going to be worth mentioning on stage.
So one of the things that I hope you would include as being part of a visual refresh, again, not necessarily, I don't think if they just announced this, I don't even think I deserve the point, but night mode, for instance, if they included a dark mode, system-wide dark mode, I would think that would be that would be part of we have a new visual refresh or whatever they decide to call it specifically, and within that we also are announcing dark mode. Like that would be a tent pole of the system refresh. But I also
I will
yeah,
I will give that to you as a potential qualifier.
right.
So we'll explicitly include dark mode because you're calling it now.
They have to include dark mode?
No, I'm saying like if after the fact, oh well, they mentioned dark mode, that counts. I'm like, well, no. But if since you're anticipating that as possibility now, I'll give that point to you if they.
Okay. So I have seen some changes. So the WWDC app was updated again, as it is every year with all the new events and stuff. Today, I believe the update came out today, and they tend to give little signals about things leading up to the events. And one of the things that is different about the app today is that it is organized and looks a lot like the Apple Music and Apple News apps. Whereas before it looked very different. Now, I had this in here before, but it looks like there's big bold text as headings in the same way as it looks in Apple Music and Apple News. And then the subheaders and sections are organized in a similar way. So I'm pretty confident that something like that will be happening. And so I was happy to see that change.
Yeah. But again, they need to mention that change on stage.
They need to mention the change. That needs to be a feature of the operating system that's mentioned. And
just showing a screenshot and be like, oh, look, that text in that screenshot looks a bit bigger. That's a visual change. Like they need to mention.
Yep.
There is
mention that it's different. Yep. Okay. So my number
6.
Sorry, not 4, 6. I'm sorry, I'm looking at number 4. My number 6 choice is a new health app for the Apple Watch. And there are a lot of reasons for this. I have had a watch it'll be coming up on a year. And I love the health aspects of it, but they're not nearly comprehensive enough. They're basically the bare minimum now. And I think there's a lot more they could do. We've heard from a couple of news reports that Tim Cook is actually wearing whether it's a new version of the watch or whether it's some kind of accessory specifically to track glucose levels for diabetes measurement and treatment. And I think that along with the idea that they're going to be taking the watch more seriously for fitness and health, I just think that this is the prime time for them to kind of centralize the health stuff on the watch. They have a health app on the iPhone, and they have a watch app on the iPhone. They have an activity app on the iPhone that specifically connects with the watch. And I just think that they will have some kind of health focused app on the watch as opposed to just having like a workout app and being able to see your heart rate, for instance. Like they will have a cohesive health app.
Interesting.
Yep. That's my 6.
Like I don't know the significance of that, so I honestly don't even know why that's on there.
The health app for Apple Watch?
Yeah, I guess if you're saying that it's lacking and that it's due for an upgrade or a change or an addition, then I'll take your word for it. But I don't have too much to say on that because I honestly haven't heard a lot about that anyway, like outside of context. So, but all the power to you for picking that. So
right. So like, the same thing happened with me looking at, say, the touch bar getting an update. Like I don't have a Mac with a touch bar, so saying the touch bar will be updated, I have no idea what that would even involve. Like I'm not going to pick that.
Right.
But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 6, keeping the same vein with photos, I'm going to go with improved support for how a dual camera system is used.
Wow. Okay.
My understanding is that it's fairly gimmicky right now. The FOCA, whatever people are calling it.
Yeah, okay. I think would be the best way to pronounce it unambiguously.
I don't know what type of change they'd introduce or what type of feature, but more purpose to it than what it's currently offering for.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe they'll do like some sort of like 3D movie mode. That'd be kind of cool, if that's even possible with on the software side with the existing
Right.
hardware.
Yeah.
But I think they're due for something, and just kind of as like a follow up to last time we introduced the new iPhone with the dual camera. Now you can do blah 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 blah, like whatever it is that they're going to introduce for it. So
you said you didn't listen to
they're-
Upgrade yet, right?
no,
So Jason
Yeah,
picked
that's
this
right.
because, sorry, what did you say?
what? No, I think it's just some like
Okay. Jason picked this item because he was saying that they would be signaling that all future devices, all future hardware that has iOS will have two cameras. He was specifically talking about the future iPads having a dual camera system. And so them kind of pointing to say, this is a thing. Developers work on this feature, use this hardware. The current dual camera system in the iPhone, I'm not sure exactly. It might work with 3D video because you could use one camera for depth in the same way they do with the 4K.
that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but it's difficult to say for sure because the two lenses have different focal lengths. And so whether you could capture information that, like visual information, like color and specifically pixels from both lenses that would be able to match up from two different perspectives to make that kind of 3D effect, I'm not sure if that would work, but I'm very intrigued in general by the prospect of it. So I would certainly be interested to see how they address it if they do.
Right. My number 7 pick, they already had this, and I thought I remember there being an announcement about it before, but
Is this your 7 or is this your 6?
it's just now that I did for dual camera.
Okay, sorry, you're right. You're right.
So my 7 is going to be Hey Siri for the Mac.
Okay.
I actually thought that they already had this. What am I thinking of? Where I'm thinking that they already had it.
They have Siri
I could have sworn. So what's this thing?
saying the words, the trigger words to activate it on your Mac. Right now you have to activate
Why
it
would
with
they
a key
have-
combo or a button.
That's crazy. Why would they not just have the trigger word?
Mike, that's why we're here. Because it's such an obvious
Okay.
feature. That's why it's chosen.
Really crazy. Anyway, so I'll pick that because it seems
Okay.
like an obvious pick.
It does seem like an obvious pick. I don't know if they will do it because it's such an obvious pick. It seems like if they didn't introduce it at the first launch of Siri for the Mac, why wouldn't they? Unless they're specifically leaving low-hanging fruit to address the next year.
Right.
But otherwise it's like,
Well, it's not like they didn't. It's not like they didn't have the technology to implement it. So
exactly.
it's like I don't. Yeah,
It's a
I don't know.
bizarre exclusion, and it will continue to be. It will either be bizarre that they left it out for a year, or it will be bizarre that it's still not there. Either way, I think it's bizarre.
What's your 7 and 8?
My number 7, I guess I will not swap my picks around. As discussed, my number 7 is bigger free iCloud storage. I don't know exactly how they would implement a change to this, whether it be you get, as people have recommended in the past, you get 16 gigs if you have a 16 gig device, you get 64 gigs if you have a 64 gig device, you get enough to back up the devices you have, and if you want more, you can pay for it. I don't know if they would do that because that means, I think that it would be cheap not to, on the basis of, oh, it's too expensive for us, because Google and Microsoft are both offering, they have like 1 terabyte offerings for $10 a month, or they have like 100 gigabytes for $2 a month. It seems a little ridiculous and kind of penny pinchy to
Right.
to say, oh, 128 gigs is too much, we can't afford it, especially when they're the most valuable company in the world. Like, it's a little silly that they're pinching pennies on this, but that's why I'm going with, I don't know, again, so I don't know if they would do that per device, break it down that way, like give you X devices times X
Right.
gigs they have, or if they would just say you get 50 gigs free, or you get 12 gigs free, or some like random number.
Right. I could see them maybe doing like a scaling increase the same way that Dropbox did or does. So that in order to get that extra space, you have to use it, and
Okay.
possibly under certain types of backups or files or whatnot.
Right.
Because I think like to offer 128 gigs of free cloud storage, like that's non-competitive.
Right.
Like I think that's like I'm sure they
Too
can
much.
afford it, but Google can afford to give 100 gigs free if they wanted to too, right? But they don't.
Yeah.
So I think they at least need some sort of like nominal fee, at least on par with what Google's offering.
Right.
So yeah, even if it's like 16 gigs free as base for everyone, and then if you want more, you can pay like $1 a month or do some sort of scaling increase.
The other option they have is keep the cap at 5 gigs. And this would still, I think, give us both a point. Give us 5 gigs per device free. You buy a device, you get 5 gigs. You buy a second device, you now have 10 gigs in your storage.
Between the two, whether it's 5
between
per
the two.
device or 10 in one.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a few different ways they could do it, but bigger storage is what we want.
Right.
Okay. Still my turn, right? Number 8?
Yes, number 8.
Okay. Number 8 is, this is wish casting so badly, but I want Apple Wallet with peer-to-peer payments. That's what I think we're going to get, is a feature along with the updated Siri with being able to pay people. I kind of foreshadowed this. I think that you'll be able to make payments, that they will announce, whether it be through like an Apple debit card or whether it just be you can send money to people and asks you what card you want to use or what account you want to use. I think they will do it, and I think it will work with Siri, and I think it will be amazing. But Apple Wallet with specifically peer-to-peer payments.
If that is the case, I think they'd be trying to compete on the international markets more, because from what I've heard, that's the biggest market for that type of service. Like we talked about on the show before with WeChat and how that's a fairly widely used service. And I'm not sure. I think I remember hearing that it was available for iOS. WeChat.
WeChat is available on iOS, yeah.
So this would be a direct competitor on that platform for the peer-to-peer payments, and they'd also have to have some sort of incentive or added feature that the other offerings don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And to my knowledge, that's mainly just WeChat. Like people don't generally use PayPal or any other type of service to do peer-to-peer. It's just maybe email money transfer is probably the main one that people do.
So that's the weird thing, is that we have like Interac e-transfer is by far the way that people, youngins, millennials, and their ilk do kind of small petty cash business, or just using cash.
Right. Or say, I'll get you next time.
Yeah. Only mature adults do that, though.
That's true.
I think that peer-to-peer payments could be a big thing, even in Canada, where it's pretty easy to get Interac, because Interac e-transfers, they're getting a little cheaper, and some banks have free ones, but they're not free. And I think being able to pay someone that has an iPhone by just like using NFC, for instance, just like tapping phones together and saying, I want to transfer the money to this person, and then tapping, or like sending it by email or sending it by iMessage. I think that's pretty compelling. And I'd like to think that the only thing that's stopping them from doing something like this would be banks being like, no, our business, and then like threatening to leave Apple Pay for something like that. Like I don't see it as being impossible. I just see it as being more limited by like politics of them having to cooperate with people versus not being technically possible or a good idea.
Right. And maybe that is more of a reason that it won't happen, is because of the Apple Pay initiative that they're trying to move forward and continue to grow, that this might be seen as a way to not need banks for that anymore.
Right.
And yeah, like I said, that might hurt the Apple Pay side of things.
Yep.
Interesting 8th pick. Okay, so my 8th pick is going to be I think for this one, so again, this is kind of ambiguous as to what it means. So I want to pick iTunes Gets Broken Up as my
Okay.
8th pick.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of the harbinger's been there for a while, I think, and just it's fairly unnecessary at this point. Just the
Yep.
iTunes brand, and so yeah, they have, what is it now? They have like Apple Music,
Yep. Apple
they have
Watch,
Apple Podcasts, or
Apple
just
TV.
podcasts, maybe
Yeah,
Apple TV,
Apple
right?
Podcasts. Yeah,
Yeah,
they have all these Apple things.
right, and they're all siloed for their own type of product,
Yeah.
right? But iTunes is still kind of like, oh, you can get shows on it and music, and it's kind of like their store, so to speak. They have an app store as well, which always confused me. So however they do it, I guess they'll get rid of the iTunes brand, or just the iTunes interface or platform. I don't know. We'll have to use a bit of judgment on this one, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to say, hey,
Yeah.
we're breaking up iTunes, but I think they'll
Mhm.
say, hey, now we have Apple blah, Apple blah, Apple blah, like, right?
Right.
I think that's the idea behind this one.
Yeah.
So
the interesting thing about this one is that there are other platforms that exist, and I don't know how well a broken up iTunes would work on Windows, specifically because at Build a couple weeks ago, Microsoft announced iTunes is coming to the Windows Store. Or the Microsoft Store. I don't even know what it's
whatever
called.
it is. Yeah, I think it's Microsoft Store. Yeah.
I realized that. I was like, this sounds weird. So I would be very interested to see how if they are canceling the iTunes brand, I would be very interested to see how they do that, how they navigate that with Windows existing. Specifically with all the syncing, with being able to listen to Apple Music, whether they launch a separate Apple Music app, whether they keep everything together on Windows, but they kind of break it all apart on the Mac. I think it's a good idea for Mac, but I don't know. Maybe there needs to be an iTunes store that still exists on the Mac, like where people buy music and where people buy, I guess iBooks would probably go to the iBooks app. The TV would probably go to a TV app. Like all these things are very possible, but I don't know what you'd do, how they would navigate that with iTunes for Windows.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do we do if iTunes just gets rebranded? But
and
they don't
stays the exact same, but
they don't break stuff out.
everything?
Yeah.
I think you know the answer in your heart. I don't think you get the point if they just call it Apple content.
Like what's it called? Like the Apple Store, or the
Well,
maybe they could bring back like the E branding and be like Apple E Store.
Oh gosh, don't do that. I don't. If it's a renaming, I don't think you get the point. But if they take Apple Podcasts out, if they take TV out, if they do things to remove types of content from the store, I would call that an unbundling, and I would count it. But if they just rename it to get rid of the iTunes brand, I don't think that counts.
So how about they take at least one thing out?
Okay.
And then
if they take one thing out, I will,
even without rebranding, and take at least one thing out.
If they announce an Apple Podcast app or an Apple TV app where you buy, it's not just where you watch TV, but it has to be where you buy the TV as well. Like the TV experience has to move out of iTunes,
right?
Or whatever experience.
Yeah.
Unless there's some massive tearing apart of the application, which would be great, but I don't know if it'll happen. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with those conditions. That's okay. So now it's time for my last two picks. My ninth pick. This is, again, I just think it's a very Apple-y thing to do. I think that the Apple file system, their new APFS, is going to be the default file system for the next version of macOS.
We don't have a chime. We need a chime for the show.
I don't think we need a chime. I think there are certain other podcasts that need a chime. So the reasons for this are obvious. They announced it last year to much applause and a chime. If you watched the afternoon session where they talked about and announced APFS, did you hear that story, by the way?
No.
So they have their keynote in the morning, and then they have their what they call the App State of the Union, or the Apple State of the Union, in the afternoon on the first day. It's like the keynote part 2. It's like how Google did their like IO keynote in the morning, and then did their developer keynote in the afternoon. And of course, John Siracusa was sitting in the audience for the State of the Union. And when they announced APFS, someone dinged a bell in the audience. And it's audible on the actual recording. And it's so funny. And I think they said during the session, like as they were talking about it, the camera actually panned to him. Like, it's so well known.
Right.
And,
I didn't actually know the backstory to the chime. I just heard them start using it. I'm like, what the heck is that all about? But yeah.
So every time he mentions a file system.
Yeah.
And so this file system's good. And specifically, I think the reason I think they would do it in mass at the next major version is because they transitioned all iOS devices with iOS 10.3 to APFS silently on device without being synced to iTunes. And they did it for millions of devices, if not hundreds of millions of devices, in a couple of days. And there were no issues. Like there was no higher blip than there ever is for any update. And the problems were not caused by APFS. Nobody said, like, there have been some minor updates that have just like completely borked systems. This one, there was nothing. There was not even a whisper. I'm not saying that nobody had any problems, because obviously there's a background level of people having update issues, but APFS was rolled out to an entire operating system that has hundreds of millions of users. And unless you knew what was happening, you didn't notice, except that maybe you got some extra storage space because it optimized storage. And so I think they would do it for this OS because it's the same file system, because it runs on the same kernel. I think they would have enough confidence to do it. Whether it's kind of said or not, or whether they do it, whether they implement it slightly differently, I think the default system, when you update from the current version of macOS to the next major version, APFS will be the file system on the new version.
Good pick.
Okay. Now, Mike, we come to my 10th pick.
This is the moonshot pick.
What?
This is the moonshot pick.
Yeah. So I asked you before the show if I could go off script for this.
Mm-hmm.
And you said no. Do you stand by that decision? So for context, I have a 10th item on my list, and it's fine. It's well regarded. You know about it. I also have a bonus pick written down here that I want to use as my last pick, but I didn't want you to know about it beforehand.
But I think that kind of defeats the purpose of knowing the items beforehand, because then I might have picked it higher up.
Yeah, I don't think you would have. I don't think you would have picked it. I don't think it's a good idea to pick it. I just want to pick it, and I want to say it. I want to choose it, but I want you to have the ability to veto it if you don't like it, or if you would have picked it higher or whatever. You can veto it for any reason. I will
humor you.
Okay.
And I will allow you to say it.
I'm glad that I ignored you the first time then, because I really want to say it. Whether it's a good idea or not, my last 10th pick was also a waste and stupid. But this one, I think, would be so amazing if it happened that I just have to pick it. So my 10th pick is on stage during the keynote. They will announce something in asterisks big that nobody has theorized or talked about. There will be a major thing announced. I'm not saying what it is, but I think not even been, if we go and look on the web afterwards and there is an article theorizing it, I don't get this point. But if there is something that is announced, a big thing that nobody has talked about, then I get a point.
Okay, so I feel like my Apple Photos going cross-platform qualifies for that.
I don't think it does. It needs to be bigger than that.
I think it does. People
would
will
need
be
to be
talking
like,
about it if they suddenly announce Apple Photos cross-platform. That no one, I haven't heard anything about that.
if you go and look on forums, you would see it. Like you would see an article written about it. I'm not saying necessarily forums like that we can't find any mention of it ever existing, but like if there's no rumors or no articles about it.
Okay, you need to give an example. Even if it's a hyperbolic example,
right?
You need to give
this is a hyperbolic example
of something
in your context. So bigger than just announcing that photos has gone across platform. This would be like, we have our core suite of apps going cross-platform. We have Mail, Apple Mail for Android. We have iMessage for Android. We have Apple Wallet. Like it would have to be the entire app suite. Like,
I would love if Apple Wallet went cross-platform.
The scale of that is too much, I think. Like I think it could be smaller than that, but that kind of idea, like something crazy that nobody ever could have predicted. Or that at least that nobody did predict, not that nobody could ever predict.
I think that's a throwaway. That's a throwaway pick.
I want it. I want to be surprised. Do you want me to? You can veto
give
it.
like a realistic example, because the one you gave, that's beyond hyperbolic.
What if? Okay, so I want to use a caveat before I pick and give you an example, because I'd have to think of one. But if I say a thing that I think nobody has theorized and that could possibly be announced, if they announce my example, then I get the point still. Do you agree with that?
If they announce your example, I'd consider that an automatic win of this whole draft.
Okay, so something on the scale of like, they announced, whether it be major steps towards unifying Mac OS and iOS, like giving a Mac with a touchscreen that like supports Apple Pencil, like a merger of the platform, not necessarily like these are now, we now only have one platform and it's Apple OS, because I don't think they would do that, but major steps towards unifying iOS and Mac OS, like they had a couple of versions ago with Android, where they were like, you can now do it on Chrome OS and you can run all your apps on whatever.
Kind of similar to like a continuum type environment.
Yeah.
Almost like that would be the scale of what you're talking about.
Right. Because what they have now with Continuum is very minimal.
Right.
But something on that scale.
Right. Because like Samsung has their new device that does a continuum type thing.
Dex.
So
yeah.
Right. So okay. Sure. I'll give it to you.
Okay.
I'll let you put it down.
I feel
so I'm intrigued. You sold it to me.
So this is your 10th pick?
9th and 10th.
How was your?
I have 2 picks.
Was I supposed to be 10th last? I wasn't I?
I don't know. We've just been picking 2 at a time.
No, but I think I picked 3 at a time, didn't I?
No. I picked my first 2, and then
no, I know, but I think I just picked 3.
Oh no, because I picked 1, and then you picked 2, and then I picked 2, and then 2.
Right, but I should have gone last, but now you are last.
Did you pick 3? I don't know.
I think I picked my 8, 9, and 10 all in order.
Okay, maybe. Either way, I have 2 left.
In which case, I apologize.
That's okay.
My 10th one anyway.
Okay, so my 9th pick is going to be Apple TV gets at least 1 new content provider partnership.
Okay.
We talked behind the scenes of this. But I think we came to an understanding of what I mean by this.
Yeah.
So we won't get into it right now, but
basically,
like it's basically like in the same way that you have like Netflix and Hulu, and I think HBO Go functions the same way, where you can subscribe directly to the content without needing a cable subscription. That is what I am referring to with my content provider partnership. So this isn't like Verizon. Is Verizon even a cable provider? Comcast. So. Say Comcast releases an app that you can watch their shows, like or CBS or whatever. Like that kind of thing. Like I'm not counting that as a content partnership, because that would ostensibly require a cable subscription.
Unless it didn't.
Unless it didn't, which I'd be surprised if it didn't. But so it basically has to. It's not like, oh, you can log in using your cable login data to get the content. This is like you can subscribe to this content directly without needing a cable subscription. So, and that's just more based on just Apple had forecast a while ago that they're going to have a lot more content. More. So I guess it's as good a time as any to deliver on that.
Yep.
And for my 10th pick, this is kind of, I wouldn't call it like a silly one, but I think it is kind of a tongue-in-cheek one where that Apple will have at least one female and one person of color on the stage, like that they get stage time and speaking stage time, we'll call it.
Okay.
Like they recently hired, I think it's Apple that hired a VP of diversity or something or other.
She was already in the company, but they promoted her to a newly created VP spot.
Yeah. So like, and Apple's been criticized in the past for a lot of their upper management not being very diverse. So I think, and it's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to make fun of them for these initiatives, but I think it'll be interesting to see if they make a point to have a non-white dude on the stage.
Now, do you consider this that they have to be Apple employees? Because they have a lot of people up there. The people
I guess it was
pretty diverse already. Relatively.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll qualify it with Apple employees.
They have had both. They have had this happen before. They've had two different, I think at least mixed race, if not black women up individually as employees.
Okay.
And I think one of each, but so it's not unprecedented. It would be relatively straightforward for this to happen. But I, as somebody who wants to see more of that, I am totally on board because, like they were saying, I think it was both, maybe not Build, but definitely the last couple of Google I/Os, people have been like, have there been any white dudes on the stage yet? And so I think those companies have been doing something right, and Apple following their example is a good thing. Okay. We've done 10 things each.
I think that's a wrap.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say before the event?
I'm impressed that I think we only had one or two duplicates.
Yeah, I think we only had one, didn't we?
Well, no, you had macOS goes to 11, and then you had the iCloud one.
We picked that one at the same level, yeah.
Yeah, but there's only a half point. There's only a half point at stake here as far as duplicates go. So
yeah.
No, I'm impressed. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of these come true.
I'm very much looking forward to that.
Like I think I anticipated, like I'm usually more into the September event news, but I think there's a lot of stuff here that Apple is coming from a position of being, there's a lot expected from them to catch up with a lot of what the industry is doing. So I'll be excited to see Apple proving people right that they are still in the game with a lot of this stuff. Okay, well, I better go and edit this episode so we can get it up right away. Sounds good.
Because we are going to be recording another episode as usual on Sunday, unless something goes horribly wrong. I hope I'm not a harbinger of something horrible happening. So in that case, I'll talk to you Sunday.
Ciao.
Bye, everybody.